Hello, Gold participants and listeners from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC for Gold Learning. And here at Gold, our preparations for the upcoming Gold Midwifery Online Conference of 2020 are in full swing. The conference starts on February 3rd, and that's basically just around the corner. And before the conference, we like to get together with our speakers and chat a bit, not only about the upcoming presentation, but also about their work in the field and what they're up to. And my special guest today is Dr. Evita Fernandez. Welcome, Dr. Evita.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm
Oh,
really privileged to be on this with you.
It is such an honor to have you here with us today. I'm very excited talking to you. This is one of my highlights here at Gold as a midwife, that I'm able to talk to somebody out there in the field with your experience and your background. So Dr. Fernandez, you will be presenting our closing keynote on February 24th, and this is an open access presentation. It's open and free to the public, and we do that so we get your word out there to the public, to as many people as possible, and we're excited about that. So it's so wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. I must say I feel particularly privileged and a wee bit nervous too.
No need to be nervous. We're all looking forward to your words here with us at Gold. So let me jump in, and we want to introduce you to our listeners here. So many of you, our listeners, have heard, of course, about you and of you and the work you're doing, the wonderful work you're doing. But for our listeners who are new here, you are at the helm of the Fernandez Hospital in Hyderabad, India, right? And that's your parents have founded that hospital many years ago, isn't that right?
Yes, to be exact, 72 years ago.
Wow.
With
Wow.
2 beds. Yes.
Wow.
And then, yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
They handed over the reins in 1985 after I had just come back from England, completing my membership in OBGY. And I came back realizing I wanted to offer a comprehensive maternal and newborn service, and realized I needed a team to provide that. So that's how my journey began. Yeah.
Absolutely
Yes.
wonderful. What a legacy here. And you mentioned you took over the helm in the 80s and you implemented many changes. So tell us about, especially in the fields of women's health, what you have established there.
Yeah, when I started off, Kristen, I was a pure obstetrician, just focusing on pregnancy, childbirth, and not understanding fully what it meant to put the woman and the baby at the center. For many years, I felt it was the obstetrician who was the most important person in the room. But I had these light bulb moments in my journey, thank God. Because as we grew into a perinatal referral center, we got many young women being referred to us with multi-organ failure who actually died, in the hospital. And it just left us terribly, terribly upset to see how helpless we were. And that began my journey into reading about midwifery, because wherever countries that had reduced maternal mortality, they did it because of a very strong midwifery backbone in their services. And I realized India didn't have that. So that prompted me to start a midwifery program in the hospital, and that was way back in 2011. But the introspection started earlier, in about 2006. And I realized that we needed to change the way we were practicing, because the more I read about midwifery, I realized how terribly interventional we obstetricians are. And in a patriarchal society like India, we left very little room for women to make choices, though we did give a lot of freedom in terms of, as an organization, opening our doors, making sure husbands would be with their wives, and offering that support. But we had a long way to go in understanding woman-centered care, and that's been growing over the years. So now I've committed the rest of my professional life to promoting midwifery, natural birth, talking to fellow obstetricians about the need to change childbirth practices.
Absolutely beautiful. And so you have a teaching facility as well. You are an international speaker. You travel the world. You had a TEDx talk. How do you do it all?
Wow. I'm not sure I have an answer to that, though. I must admit, being single and opting to live a single life does give me a tremendous amount of freedom in terms of time. And I realized that you can pack in things depending on what is important for you. And over the years, also learned to kind of handle silence, reflection as part of the day, because unless I did that, I couldn't be doing the other things that I wanted to immerse myself in. So I guess that is one of the secrets. Yes.
And you mentioned something that really spoke to me. You mentioned reflection and how you, with an obstetrics background, really used reflection. I mean, that must have taken a lot of courage and a lot of difficult moments to look into your journey and say, oh my, we practice so much intervention, then going and trying to educate under other obstetricians. That I can imagine that was not always easy.
No, it wasn't easy, but Kristen, one of the strengths of the hospital was our, we always audited things. So we were constantly looking at our own stats. We were looking at patient care. We were looking at days spent in hospital. So we were used to auditing and reflecting. So in that sense, introspection was so much an integral part of my life and even as an organization. So when you realize something is wrong, it didn't take me long to sit down and reflect. And taking that step and saying, yes, we are wrong, we've been wrong, we need to change, that took a lot of hard work because it meant trying to convince colleagues who walked with me for 20 odd years, and all of us believed in a different philosophy, and we suddenly had to do a 180-degree turn. It took me about 18 months to get everybody on board, yes. But
Right.
now everyone is convinced we need to change, our attitudes have changed. We still have a long way to go, because as a teaching hospital, every year you get 20 young doctors who have never met a midwife before, who've never looked at physiological birth. So whenever we get the postgraduates, the first 1 month, oh my gosh, we're battling with a high episiotomy rate, certain level of interventions, and then the graph goes down again.
So it pays off. And probably these young physicians, the learning curve there, seeing that what they learn, kind of not to unlearn, but to see a different perspective and that it works too. So what did you find helpful in the process? I'm sure you're using a lot of research to convince and teach and to show the benefits of that.
Yes, we are constantly looking at the evidence, looking at, do we need to change our guidelines? Do we need to adapt? Because you can't put into practice everything that you read. Because one of the biggest challenges in the organization is we're totally private, and only 18% of our mothers can afford insurance. The rest, it's out of pocket. And we serve the entire spectrum, right from women who can't pay to the women who can. So we do a lot of cross-subsidization. And therefore, everything, whether it's a lab test, a blood test, or a medication, we need to be absolutely sure it is important, it's going to make a difference, it's needed, it's evidence-based. So
Right.
we're constantly trying to review what we are doing. And I must admit at this point, when we started our journey into midwifery, because to me that was the most defining decision that I made in my career, to launch the midwifery program. And when we had British midwives come across and teach on the program, they challenged me, they challenged us with very ordinary questions which we had never even bothered to ask ourselves. And that's how the unlearning began. And I
Hmm.
realized I had to unlearn a lot and relearn equally the same amount. And I have absolutely no regrets about doing that.
And I can hear that in the passion of your voice, how important this topic is to you, how important, these women, these families are to you, and that you're serving, and it's wonderful to hear that. Um,
Thank you.
Now let's talk a little bit about the presentation itself, Birth Without Interventions. And when I looked at that title, it triggered so many emotions. As a midwife myself, and for the other fellow midwives out there, we are, yes, this is it. This is what we're striving for. This is what we want, what we're practicing out there in the field. But sometimes I feel, oh my goodness, Dr. Evita, we are so few. There are so many women every day going into these hospitals, and the first intervention basically happens as soon as they put their hospital gown on, right? Oh, and
Yes.
sometimes I feel that so, it's so discouraging. And so what can we do, just us little people here, us little midwives, birth workers, doulas? How can we chip away on this system of,
Yes.
on this crisis
Um, um,
that's out there?
yeah, one thing I do believe, Kristen, the more we discover that we are together, we need to hold hands and form that strong network of support, supporting each other. The second thing, I think it's so important to empower the women we serve with the right knowledge. It really breaks my heart when I find women not attending the childbirth classes. We call it childbirth without fear, and we try to get them to believe that they can birth normally.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've offered this, in three languages. And I agree, we are very few. I mean, if you take India as a country, it's 26 million births a year. I mean, there's no way we can offer a midwife for every woman. So we are
Right.
looking at different ways of handling this. We've got a group that we call them additional labor support. And they are a group of young women who have been trained in massage, in
Mm.
just being there with the woman. Absolutely no medical knowledge, or they don't interfere with the medical
Mm-hmm.
side, but just that support
Right.
from the hospital, because we don't have enough midwives. In our own hospital, we do about 900 odd births a month,
Mm-hmm.
and we realize we're struggling with these volumes. So
Yeah.
how does one give every woman that space, that freedom, that confidence that she can do what she wants, which she thinks is appropriate? Decisions are made with respect, with trust. I struggle. I can see
Mm-hmm.
my colleagues struggling with it. So much more if I just take India or countries that have high volumes and not enough healthcare workers. Um, what gives me comfort is every time we've done good, done the right thing for a woman, and she's gone home with a positive birthing experience, that's one step forward.
Right. Right. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Empower these women, give them
Mm-hmm.
education, and you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Convincing them. This is I tell you, this is a worldwide phenomenon. Right now, it's
Mm-hmm.
not easy to convince families or women to take the childbirth classes. Even
Mm-hmm.
here, I practice in the United
Mm-hmm.
States. I'm curious to hear
Mm-hmm.
about other countries how it is there. Although on the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, I must say, women nowadays are much more informed about birth. Many women
Yes.
also,
Yes.
and this is wonderful. This is a great, a great development that I see, and I wonder if you see that in your country, in India, there as well.
Oh, I,
That
I, I see it. Yes.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Tell
Go
me.
ahead.
Yeah. No. Go.
No,
Tell me
you've
what you see in
alluded
the
you
women in India.
yes, you've alluded to a very important point. Thanks to the internet, thanks to all the
Mm,
technology, social media, there is a growing lobby of women, and rightly so, who are, reading, who've got this knowledge, who are convinced they want birth to be different. And I think unless we obstetricians, listen to these voices, reflect, and start looking at birth differently, women will no longer come to the hospitals. They will seek other options. So I think it's important that we listen, and it's not just urban, it's even in the rural
mm-hmm.
areas, in smaller places where you have one mission hospital or a small hospital that's offering that kind of woman-centered care, and word gets
Right.
around. Just as a
Mm-hmm.
tiny example, when we were training 30 nurses for the government of our state in a district hospital that's about 2.5 hours out of the city of Hyderabad, these midwives, these nurses, once they understood woman centered care and midwifery led care, had caused ripples in that town. And women
Beautiful.
began to come into the public hospital because they heard of this new breed of people in the
Mm-hmm.
labor ward and the delivery rooms who were not shouting at them. There was no
Mm-hmm.
physical violence, there was respect, there was kindness, there was compassion. And
Mm-hmm.
during that 1 year of training, it just overwhelmed us as trainers to see the difference that was so obvious in a community like that. And if this could be extrapolated in every birthing center, my word, we would be birthing a whole new generation that starts on a positive, confident note. Healthy mothers, healthy babies, positive birthing experiences.
Sounds absolutely beautiful. And you're right. I mean, so we as midwives, we need to make change, but also the families, the mothers themselves, when they ask for it and
Yes,
demand it and see it
yes,
somewhere done, that
yes.
creates that ripple effect that you mentioned. Yeah,
Yes, yes. And
absolutely.
and I also believe we need to be honest with our mothers. If I know that there is a particular service being offered in another
Mhm.
center, I should tell that mother, you know what, you can go to this center for this particular choice. But right now, we're not ready to offer that. And this happened to me about 18 months ago, long before Sister Sean Walker came across and did her term physiological breech birth with us. She ran a workshop for us, and now we have dedicated breech clinics, and we've actually birthed primips, vaginal breech. But before we had this knowledge and this confidence, when a young woman asked for a vaginal breech, I knew of a place that was offering it. And I said, go there, and, you will
Mhm.
get your choice and people will support you. And I think it's important we build up that kind of network where we have the humility to let a
Mhm.
mother know where her choice can be respected. I
Mhm.
think it's important. That's why I believe when we work together, much
Yes,
can be achieved.
absolutely. The choice to be respected. That very wise words there. Now, before I let you go, Dr. Evita, what are you hoping that the listeners will take away from your presentation that you're holding here for the Gold Conference?
Yeah, I'm hoping that my listeners will be convinced wherever they are working, despite all the challenges, that if we can empower women and support them with evidence-based practices, because in many parts of the world, women birth alone. And to have a birth without interventions, at least there is a higher possibility of a woman enjoying that kind of a birth if she's surrounded by midwives or healthcare workers who understand normal physiology. So I'm hoping that the listeners will go away with the belief that practices need to be maybe changed, and if we can offer that support, women will enjoy birth without interventions.
Well, Dr. Evita Fernandez, thank you so much for chatting here with me today. It was such a pleasure and such an honor having you here with me today.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you very much.
And once again, as a reminder to our listeners, Dr. Evita Fernandez will be presenting Birth Without Interventions. It's our closing keynote for the Gold Midwifery Online Conference of 2020. Dr. Evita will be presenting twice on February 24th. To find out more information about this presentation and the other presentations in the conference, and about information on when the presentations are being held in your time zone, go to goldmidwifery.com. And don't worry if you cannot make any of the two live presentations. We will have recordings available for you too. And again, this presentation is open access, so we hope to see you there. And we thank you all for listening and participating with us today. Bye-bye, everyone.